What is going on, everybody? Welcome again to another episode of the Pokelore Podcast. This is your friend and host, Professor Cedar. And as always, joining me.
And I'm Professor Pine.
And today we are diving into a bit of an ancient Pokemon, Aerodactyl. This is a Pokemon who, if you want to imagine in our world, the world of dinosaurs, Aerodactyl comes from the very distant past and would be nothing more than a fossil if not for some scientific intervention. But we'll get into all of that in this episode. Aerodactyl, known as Terra in Japanese, is a rock flying type fossil Pokemon first introduced in Generation 1. Resurrected from an old amber fossil, this prehistoric predator is a relic of a bygone era. Its return is a testament to the ambition and perhaps the folly of modern science. Though it has no known evolutions, Aerodactyl can undergo a mega evolution, transforming into the savage and fearsome Mega Aerodactyl when exposed to Aerodactylite. The old amber, or secret amber in Japanese, is no ordinary fossil. Unlike the fragmented remains of other prehistoric Pokemon, it is a pristine relic, an ancient gemstone preserving the genetic essence of the long extinct predator. Again, introduced in Generation 1, this artifact holds the secret to reviving Aerodactyl. Unlike traditional fossils, which bear the shapes of bones or shells, the old amber is a hardened, translucent resin with a rich, tawny red glow, as it still pulses with the lifeblood of the creature trapped within. Yet its existence raises unsettling questions. While the Pewter City Museum houses an intact Aerodactyl skeleton, proving that the beast left behind fossilized remains, the old amber alone serves as the key to its resurrection. How much of what returns is truly Aerodactyl, and how much is the byproduct of human intervention?
So, a creature of the ancient skies, Aerodactyl bears the unmistakable traits of a pterosaur infused with draconic essence. Menace, my mistake. Its ridged snout and gaping maw brim with serrated fangs, perfectly adapted for rending flesh. Narrow, dark green eyes glimmer with a predatory intelligence, while its membranous violet wings stretch wide, casting ominous shadows over the land below. Though its clawed wingtips allow it to grasp objects mid-flight, its true weapons are like sharp and capable of seizing prey with terrifying precision. A ridged spike juts from its back, and its long arrow-tipped tail serves as both rudder and bludgeon in aerial combat. Aerodactyl is an imposing predator standing at 5 foot 11, with a lean yet powerful frame built for aerial dominance. Despite its skeletal, almost not appearance, it weighs a solid 130 pounds, or 59 kgs, a testament to its dense, muscular, battle-hardened form. Among Aerodactyl's kind, males vastly outnumber females with a gender ratio of 87.5% male to 12.5% female. It's unclear if this disparity is caused simply through the regeneration process and available samples, or if Aerodactyl naturally skew strongly between the sexes. In its prime, Aerodactyl was a dominant force of the prehistoric skies. Its fearsome serrated fangs could tear through flesh and armor-like, and even the toughest steel-type Pokemon would find no sanctuary from its bite. Though primarily a glider, Aerodactyl's powerful wing beats allowed it to soar freely, filling the skies with its piercing cries. On land, however, it moved with less grace, favoring the high mountain crags, where it could nest in peace. The species was thought to have been wiped out by a cataclysmic meteor impact, vanishing into extinction along with countless other Pokemon from its era. However, through modern genetic reconstruction, Aerodactyl has been reborn. Though the process has not been perfect, several early attempts at revival ended in disaster. And even now, scholars question whether the restored aerodactyl truly mirrors its ancient form.
Yeah, I guess before we get into the mega evolution part, let's just unpack a little bit of that.
Sure.
Aerodactyl is, um, again, this ancient wiped or prehistoric Pokemon who was wiped out. Obvious, very obvious parallels with dinosaurs, meteor impact, extinction events. However, obviously, drawing from the science fiction inspiration, which we'll get into towards the end of the episode, Aerodactyl is able to be reborn from taking genetic material from amber um, and reconstituting an approximation of what they think Aerodactyl could have been. And they're not super clear on what the genetic process is to recreate it. So it's not necessarily a one-for-one clone. Again, I'll kind of delve into it a little more with the Jurassic Park parallels. But the process is imperfect, and no one's really sure if they're getting a true copy or if this is something else. It's maybe 99, 95, 80% Aerodactyl, the true Aerodactyl of what
Hmm.
it was.
Um, yeah, I'm I'm trying to think back. I'm actually playing through the old Pokemon Red game right now. I just haven't made it to the part where I get Aerodactyl back. Um, but I think there is something where they kind of mention some sort of a machine that they put the old amber into, and yeah, they're like you say, they're vague about it, but it somehow reconstructs the entire Pokemon.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I wonder how precise they are. Like we just talked about, they have like a whole intact Aerodactyl skeleton at the Pewter City Museum. Um, Maybe they found a way to bypass our technology and they can program what the rest of the bones would look like. So if they have the old amber with a section of the DNA in it, they can just replicate the bone structure and then just kind of throw some flesh on it. I don't know.
Magic.
But magic, there you go. But the one thing I remember, maybe you remember this episode in the old Pokemon series, Ash ends up falling into this kind of crevice with Team Rocket, and they actually find a live pterodactyl, or sorry, live Aerodactyl, live Kabutops, live Kabuto, Ammonite, Amistar, all those guys, just sitting in this cave. And they were sleeping all this time, so still alive. And I don't know, so like they talk about it being extinct, but I kind of wonder, is it actually extinct?
Yeah, certainly. Actually, in real life too, there's instances of discovery or rediscovery of species who had long been thought to be extinct as well. So, and there's always this kind of like modern myth of a world where dinosaurs, like an impact crater somewhere that never was affected by extinction events, where you could still find dinosaurs, or in the depths of the earth or depths of the ocean, they somehow escaped extinction. I don't recall. I do recall an episode where Aerodactyl appears. The details are very hazy, and I don't remember if that Aerodactyl is an escaped, reconstituted Aerodactyl, or it was a case where this Aerodactyl had hidden away for millennia. And the other thing to consider too is like it may not be an Aerodactyl that has been around for that long, but it was reproducing over all these years, just tucked away somewhere where it wasn't encountered. So it's not that that particular Aerodactyl is a million years old or 10,000 years old or what have you, but you know that many generations down the line, and it just hasn't been encountered yet. But I'll have to go back and rewatch that episode to see. But beyond that, let's talk a little bit about Aerodactyl's mega evolution. When Aerodactyl undergoes a mega evolution, a terrifying transformation takes place. Its eyes blaze an eerie green as fragments of its body harden into jagged black stone. Resembling the creature it may have been before fossilization, rather than the incomplete form that regular aerodactyl takes, spiked outcroppings sprout from its limbs, tail, and jaw, forming a brutal, weaponized exoskeleton. Rocky plates encase its eyebrows and torso, further enhancing its armored form, said to be as hard as a diamond. Some researchers believe that mega evolution merely reawakens dormant genetic traits, revealing Aerodactyl's true prehistoric visage. Regardless of the truth, one thing is certain. Mega Aerodactyl is a creature driven by an insatiable, almost primal fury. Weighed down by the immense power coursing through its form, it becomes even more violent, lashing out at anything that dares to move. When Aerodactyl undergoes mega evolution, it grows even more formidable. Its body expands to 6 foot 11 inches, a full foot taller than its original form, while its weight surges to 174.2 pounds. It's as jagged stone growths erupt across its body. Every inch of its frame is sharpened into a weapon, reinforcing the theory that this monstrous form may be a glimpse of its true unrestrained prehistoric power. It is a glimpse into an age long past, where monsters ruled the skies and fear was the law of the land. So yeah, you have an even more the old Aerodactyl, even in the anime as well, was always kind of shown to have like a very bad temper. It wasn't very nice. It was very aggressive, and this is the Mega Aerodactyl is even more so. That. All right,
Yeah.
let's talk
Uh,
about.
yeah. So one thing, just as far as the mega evolution goes, um, I remember reading that when mega evolution happens for any Pokemon, apparently it's a very, very painful process for the Pokemon. So even though they get stronger, they're able to fight better in battle, things like this, it's apparently basically Pokemon abuse. Like the kind of pain and torture that they go. Honestly, that's what I read. That
I mean,
that yeah,
arguably, Pokemon battles
it's like
together are animal abuse. So, but yeah,
yeah,
I get what you're saying.
yeah, but yeah, it's apparently pretty rough. So I mean, I'm not surprised by it being even more aggressive. And apparently, the entire time they're transformed, it's painful for them.
Yeah, yeah, it makes
So
sense.
yeah,
Mega Aerodactyl is even more violent and aggressive than its other forms. So, if it's in constant pain, and typically when animals are in
hmm
pain, they lash out, obviously, because of the lack of the ability to communicate. Um,
right.
yeah, and then there's also the added layer of is this the true version of Aerodactyl? You know, did in the skeleton in Pewter City, is that an incomplete skeleton? And you know, these bone growths and things, were they always there? Um,
hmm
they don't know. We don't know for sure.
Um, I'm reminded of our Pokemon Origins episode where we're talking about just how all the gods were, sorry, the gods, like the Pokemon, were created, and they were each given dominion over certain things. And one of the things that's Pokemon famous that everybody who loves Pokemon knows about is Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre. Now, those are supposedly some sort of sleeping, dormant form that they had way back when. Excuse me. So maybe when the world was created, they were that primal form, and then that side of them kind of starts to fall asleep, kind of fade away a little bit. And, and it's possible that that's what mega evolution is for each of these other Pokemon.
It
Is
restores.
Mew create? Sorry, gives yeah, right. So maybe Mew gives birth to all these other Pokemon, and each of them has their own primal form. Well, not each of them, but some of them. And that primal form eventually kind of de-evolves its way out as the Pokemon finds, hey, I'm faster this way, or hey, I'm more compact this way, and things don't hurt as much, right? And
Yeah.
then Mega Evolution, I could just imagine they're like, no, don't do it. I gave this up for a reason. And then you go and you for battle purposes, and they're like, damn it. I don't know. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there is a whole primal reversion. I think we'll do a whole episode on it because there's a little bit to unpack there. And you're right, there are other primal
Mm-hmm.
versions of Pokemon as well. So that's definitely a whole area that we'll probably unpack. Prehistoric Pokemon, and there are other prehistoric Pokemon too that we definitely are going to delve into as well in their own episodes. But yeah,
Sure.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, a couple other observations. So we have the obvious Jurassic Park connotations with this, right? Especially use of the amber, the mosquito, for that had sucked the blood out of dinosaurs from which they can extract that dinosaur DNA. And this was
Mm-hmm.
is what I was alluding to earlier in the episode. Yeah, it's very much lifted from Jurassic Park. And in Jurassic Park, they mix the dinosaur DNA with things like amphibians and other like modern day lizards and things in order to create these approximations of dinosaurs. So even in Jurassic Park, they're not really supposed to be representations of actual dinosaurs. They are these genetic mutant monsters that they created that are as close as they think they can get. And we very much have the same kind of elements in
Mm-hmm.
the aerodactyl resurrection story.
Mm-hmm. Um, yeah. And crazy thing to note outside of the Pokemon world is that we're working towards that in real life because nobody learned from watching the movies. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. They are. It's interesting. They're currently, whenever you may watch this episode, there's a lot of discussion around this supposed resurrection of the dire wolf. Now there is actually a whole bunch of stuff around that it might be a little bit overhyped as it's being portrayed. However, I do know, yeah, there are active attempts to resurrect a lot of extinct animals. I think there's an attempt to resurrect the mammoth by breeding in genetics into modern elephants. But I think it's that same idea of mixing DNA. So, like, whatever creature we end up creating, it's not really that lost thing. It's an amalgamation of something current and something old. So it's almost something new altogether. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and whether or not any of that's ethical or if it's a good idea or what other side effects it might lead to. I mean, the whole story of Jurassic Park is a warning against doing exactly this. And yet, as you said, it's almost like AI. We have the Terminator series telling us about where AI ends. We have Jurassic Park telling us not to mess with genetic science. And yet, there we go.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know the other thing that kind of pops up for me is in the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet games, you're introduced to the ancient forms of other Pokemon, and they go by totally different names. So I forget what it is, but they have like an ancient version of a Jigglypuff. It
Yeah.
looks kind of different, weird. Um, it's possible that Mega Evolution and these ancient forms of these Pokemon are the exact same thing.
Yeah. There may be
And
an
I
error in
mean,
classification.
yeah. So, I mean, now who's to say if you were to find, which, sorry, I just have to kind of go on a not so much a rant, but it kind of bothered me when they introduced Mega Evolution, how they couldn't come up with a creative name for each of these like Mega Evolution stones. It had to be Aerodactylite, Charizardite, and like, it's just really not creative. They put so much effort into coming up with all these Pokemon designs, and then they go, yeah, whatever, just throw the friggin' name of the Pokemon on it. It's good enough, right? So
Yeah.
I guess if you find some Jigglypuffite, you might be able to get that primal Jigglypuff back, you know?
Yeah. Now, are the
And
stones?
it's,
It makes sense if they're named after the stone. Yes, it's not creative, but at least like the stone obviously doesn't have an inherent name. Humans named it. So they took a stone, they did what they do to make it, have a reaction to that Pokemon, and then they named the stone after that Pokemon. That kind of makes sense in that, like, if I gave you a whole bunch of rocks, it would be easier to match what rock you needed to get what effect out of what Pokemon. I'm just saying, I'm trying to defend it. And I agree with you. It's very uncreative, if that's a word, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just think they could have put a little bit more thought into it. Because I mean, like, you think about it in real life, somebody finds coal, they don't just go, oh, we'll call this black rock, and oh, we'll call
Burn.
that blue rock. They don't do that. You know,
You would be surprised sometimes,
they come up with a name.
like using Latin and stuff to name things. It probably does end up being something like that. But you're right. Like we could call them burnstones or burn rocks or whatever for coal. But yeah,
Right.
I agree with you.
Exactly.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to
I mean,
bring up.
even if they just went with like airite,
Yeah,
that would be cool.
yeah, you could make it less on the
Yeah.
nose, I suppose. Yeah. Kind of in
Mhm.
the same vein, talking about the old amber as well. Just a small note. Aerodactyl is the only one that actually comes from this amber process. There are some other resurrected fossil Pokemon, but they actually resurrect them using the fossil stones. So we'll delve more into that in those episodes. But yeah, this Aerodactyl is really the only one that benefits from this method of creation or resurrection. Another little thing, we talked a little bit about real world animals that appear in Pokemon. And as you can see inside the anime version of the Amber Stone is a mosquito. So mosquitoes in the Pokemon world are
Mhm.
confirmed.
They're Pokemon. There are no real animals in the Pokemon world.
Well, then we're looking to name this
It's
Pokemon
Mesquite. That's its name.
psychic mosquito type Pokemon. Yes, perfect. I love it.
Yeah.
I can't wait for its card to come up. Yes,
Um,
and then sorry.
something that I just thought about. Sorry. Okay. For the old amber, okay, they okay, like for everything else, they're using the fossils, right? So they find a fossil of a Kabuto, they get the Kabuto back, right?
Yeah.
Amber is just fossilized tree sap. So it kind of makes me wonder, like, how are you getting this DNA from this thing? Like, is it like peeing on a tree and you're getting the DNA from it that way when the sap goes over it? Or is it the mosquito thing? Is it Aerodactyl weren't very smart and flew into trees quite a bit? Like,
Yeah,
why does it have to be old amber for this? You
so
know?
it makes sense for actually the mosquito method, because again, that's just lifted from Jurassic Park. The mosquito has
Right.
theoretically blood that it had consumed. The weirder one is actually the reverse, is getting genetic information from a fossil, because it's really just a rock. It's not
True.
even like bone matter of the animal. So you wouldn't even have a genetic imprint in the rock. So we'll probably look into that a little more on those episodes, like Ammonite and Kabuto, talking about how their
Yeah.
resurrection
Yeah, we
methods
should.
are done. But yeah, this one actually makes more sense to
Hmm.
me personally.
Only
Um,
because you like Jurassic Park. But
that's not the only reason.
yeah.
All right. Let's talk a little bit more about Aerodactyl himself. He's obviously very inspired by dragons
Hmm.
and pterosaurs in real life. Aerodactyl, the name implies arrow for air, and dactyl meaning fingers, both Greek. And then the terror part. So again, from the same root word that we get pterosaur, actually means wing, and dactylos means finger. So winged fingers for pterosaurs.
Hmm.
Um, and they're a whole subclass of dinosaur. So there's actually a variety. Everyone's very familiar with the pterodactyl, which is that wing finger. But there are various other types that have different names, different physiologies, different sizes. Like the pterodactyl clade is, or sorry, not the pterosaur clade is quite large, and encapsulates so many different kinds of dinosaurs, all sharing, the same traits of essentially being winged lizards, more or less. But just some fun real life trivia, obviously, that this aerodactyl is inspired by. Um, the dragon thing is cool too. There's a lot of talk about whether dragon mythology is, a human memory and or slash, as we were saying, dinosaurs that had survived in the deep dark crevices of the world that emerged and harassed a medieval village, and then the story of dragons comes from that, or the discovery of fossils, and they're like, oh, this is obviously a dragon skull, to like a medieval or even an ancient people. Um, Similarly, the story of the potential of where, um, the name is totally, I'm blanking here, one-eyed big monsters in Greek mythology, cyclopes. If you look at an elephant skull, you could see if, an ancient Greek saw an elephant skull and didn't necessarily know that came from an elephant, how that might lead to a story of these giant one-eyed monsters. The elephant skull has a huge
Mhm.
socket right here where it's in its face where its trunk goes. But, to a Greek who's seen a human skull would be like, oh, that might be where one eye would be. At least that's a prevailing theory as
Huh.
to where cyclopes came from, which makes sense. But yeah,
Hmm. Interesting. Um, Something I want to draw some attention to, and I have to do a little bit more research on this on my own. Um, but if you look at the spike on its back for Aerodactyl, and you look at the beta form of Charmander, it's got the exact same spike. Now, Cubone also has that exact same spike. And something else that I'll draw some attention to is if you look at the top half of the Aerodactyl skull, it does look different in the game. Like if you were some of the later games, if you go and look at the Aerodactyl fossil at the museum, you can like it'll pull up a little miniature picture of it, and that skull does look a little bit different, but it does kind of look like the Cubone skull. So anyway, what I'm trying to get at is I wonder if maybe early designs, like when Pokemon was still in talks before they like released the manga comics and the anime, the cards, all of this type of stuff. Maybe Cubone or Charmander was supposed to eventually evolve into this, and at some point they split it and turn them into different Pokemon.
that is a very interesting observation, and there are some other things that we'll get into on the Charmander and Cubone episodes that also draw some comparisons between those Pokemon. And our logo is a Cubone skull as well, so there's some interesting things to
Yeah,
observe. I'm glad you drew attention to that. Also the head spikes as well. If you look at Charizard, it has kind of like the two
yeah,
head spikes. So there's definitely some
yeah,
overlap. You could attribute
yeah.
that to just being like design overlap. However, I think there's more to that story, and I think we will definitely explore that in future episodes as well. So good catch, and good to keep an eye on in future
Hmm.
episodes.
Hmm. I know for Charmander with the beta form and that spike on its back, what they were trying to kind of go for, I guess, was they wanted it to be as it evolves, it gradually starts to look more and more like a Charizard. Because currently the way it is Charmander and Charmeleon don't look like Charizard. It's like, you know, like a, I don't know what you would use. I guess if we're going to use Darwinian evolution as an example, it's like fish fish, dragon, right? Like it
Yeah.
doesn't really, they don't
There's a
really
few Pokemon
correlate
that
too
are like
well.
that.
So yeah. So what they were going for was have a spike on its back. And then if I remember right, I could be remembering wrong. Charmeleon is supposed to have like two kind of mini stumps popping out of his back. And then it just kind of sprouts the wings as it turns into a Charizard. So it could be, and then I'd have to look into this, see if maybe I can find some interviews or something. Maybe Aerodactyl was originally supposed to be like a fourth stage evolution.
Or that like there yeah, that may be, or it could be something else where it could have been a primitive Charizard too. And
Could have
there
been,
might be
yeah.
protection that way too.
Hmm. Yeah, it's kind of an enigma, but yeah, there's a lot that the beta forms fill in the gaps on. Where
Yeah.
if we had actually found all of these beta form and kind of did the research on that, which we should do a few episodes on those, and we should get into some of the Game Freak leaks for, um, just for some of these Pokemon because they do shed extra light on kind of what the thought process was in the creation of these Pokemon.
Yeah, certainly. And for our listeners too who might not be familiar, when you say beta version, we're not talking about an in-universe Pokemon form. Betas are just like early designs of these Pokemon that weren't officially released.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Have
Great.
you ever battled with an Aerodactyl in the games? Like, did you ever use it?
Yeah, I actually quite like Aerodactyl. I definitely try and catch it if I can. I do like its aggressive nature. So,
Yeah.
and I do remember that from the anime of it just being a bad attitude. So,
Yeah. I I loved using it as one of my main Pokemon in the Red and Blue games. Any game where I'm able to get my hands on it, I like to use it. It's not the strongest Pokemon, but it's so diverse when it comes to different battle techniques and stuff like that. Like it flies, it uses rock moves. I'm pretty sure it learns dragon moves. Dragon, especially in Red and Blue, was one of the most unstoppable attacks or types of attacks that you can have in those games. So going up against an Aerodactyl was pretty formidable. Even though its HP wasn't very much, the damage that it did was just unstoppable unless you were like double the level. Um, so I have very bad nightmares about facing this thing. Mission 2, that pissed me off.
yeah.
Like it's just unfair.
Yeah. And I should correct myself. You don't catch Aerodactyl in the games. You also go through the resurrection fossil process as well. I said
Right.
I catch
Yeah.
if I can. Yeah. All right. Well, on that note,
Yeah.
any last thoughts?
No, I don't think so, but I am curious just because there are two teams for the old ghetto Pokemon players, and I have to see what team you're on. Are you team uh, Kabuto or Ammonite when you get the fossil? Which one do you go for?
Good question to end this episode on. Yeah, let's see. I personally really love Kabuto. I'm a big Scyther fan too. You can
Okay.
see a theme with the Pokemon that I like, but
Yeah, yeah. I'm team Kabuto too, so I had to ask you.
yeah, fair enough.
So,
All right. Well, with that, we save those discussions definitely for those episodes as well, and we will catch you guys next time.
see you guys later.